Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to have Devi Menon with me today. She's the author of a graphic novel called Amla Matter, which has been published by Yali Books. It is a graphic novel, which is, very interesting. And now she's on to her next book. But you know what? She's actually an IT professional. She's a Java developer, and she has over 16 years of experience having worked across countries in India, Canada, and London now. So I'm very excited to have her here today to learn about the story behind this book and also understand, her career journey. So let me start by asking you, Devi, can you share a little bit about your career journey and how did you actually end up becoming a graphic novel author and what was your motivation behind it?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much, Sonali, for that lovely introduction. So I didn't do any sort of arts when I was growing up. It was just, regular studies. And I got into IT because everybody got into IT. And no regrets over there because I thoroughly enjoy my job. I do see it as problem solving, puzzle solving mainly. So uh, I started dabbling in this whole graphic novel scenario only after I came to London. There's this lovely forum over here called Ladies Do Comics, and it's started by Nicola Streeton. And it's for women cartoonists to kind of give a voice. And I started attending it because I was, by that time, reading a fair bit of graphic novels. And it was such an eye opener because that's when I realized it was people who were juggling 2, 3 jobs who were writing at the same time. And at one of the gatherings, there was this one lady who was a graphic novelist herself, and she picked up a book and she said, "You do not have to be an artist to write, but you just need to have an honest story to tell." And that was what like really resonated. And I thought, okay, I do have a story to tell. Maybe I can try. So it was only because of this amazing forum, and thanks to them, I just started doodling a little bit. And of course, I bored my family to death with the number of drafts. I like, does this sound okay? And I was very, very lucky to have someone like Yali, whose main focus is to give voice to diverse, diverse stories, bring them to the main platform. So if not for Yali, this book would have never seen the light of day. And yes, that's how I came into this field, and I hope to be here for a bit.
Thank you for that, Devi. Actually, it's not easy being an author, and that too for a graphic novel. So I'm curious to know, did you face any kind of challenges along the way, and how did you navigate these challenges?
It was really tough. And because first you have a story and you think that's it, I have a story to tell, and it's kind of the rest of it will be like really simple. But I think the simplest part is to have the story in your head, and the rest of it is like the really tough part. Because especially for someone who doesn't have any training in art, and my drawings are still very basic, very simple, um, to think of perspectives or panel layouts, or even forget that, even having a very tight story where the reader doesn't lose an interest in the thread, uh, all that was quite challenging. So when I had to do at least 3, 4 drafts of my story, and Ambika at Yali, she was pretty much hand holding me throughout the whole process. Um, and what happens also is the fact that it's a very long process, which I didn't realize it was something that would take probably a couple of years from the time you've actually thought of the story and written down the outline. So really long process. So unless you really feel you're really in love with the idea, there's no other way out, because you can fall if once you fall out of love with that, then it's a chore, and that's the last thing you want to do on a very long project. So I would say just take something that feels very true to you, that you feel you can be invested in for the long run, and then start working on it, because that really helps.
So, Devi, you mentioned that you had a story to tell, and I would love to hear from your mouth. What was the story that you were trying to put across, and a little bit about the book, so
Oh,
our
sure.
listeners will go and actually look it up.
Thank you. I wish. Please do. So the book, the idea came to me when I was pregnant, almost in my second trimester, and I was craving appams and pickles and so many things that I wanted to eat. And being in London, of course, I didn't really have access to that. So I was just thinking of a little story of a pregnant lady going in search of a pickle, and in the process getting reunited with a childhood friend, and how that would be. And that's how the whole story came. It came out of my pregnancy. And so the more I went into the story, I mean, nostalgia hit me big time. So I went back to the little corners of my childhood, be it the house that I grew up in, the friends that I was with. So all that has come into the story, but it's fiction. Most of it is fiction, but heavy inspiration from where I was. So there's a little village the book starts from, and that's my ancestral village in Kerala, Palakkad, a little village called Kunsheri, which was paradise. And then, of course, every time I've gone to different cities to work in, be it Bangalore, be it Chennai or Hyderabad, it's the sense of how IT it kind of is changing the landscape a little bit, because I mean there's a huge influx of folks, and I don't know, traffic goes up, everyone complains about this IT factory that's going in and out of the city and how it's changed the whole structure. So a lot of it is the conversation that I've had with my colleagues in each of these cities, and the beauty of these cities, that I hope never gets lost, be it in the language, be it the food, the culture. So a bit of nostalgia for things that are slowly, probably, I do sound like an 80-year-old right now, sorry, but it is all that's kind of made its way into the book. Yeah.
Okay, sounds really interesting, and I'm sure many of us would love to, just go through and enjoy this journey with you. So I'm curious, how has following this passion, like you said, it took you almost 2 years to get the book published. So how has following this passion, and also you mentioned you were pregnant, so with a young child, and your work, how have you actually managed to juggle all of this together, and how has this impacted your work life?
Yes, not easy, definitely quite tough. It was a juggle, and I've had a tremendous support from my husband. I mean, without him, I wouldn't have gone into the world of graphic novels, and without him, I wouldn't have got this book out. So, and that's the kind of, unfortunately, that's the kind of price that you have to pay if you're, dabbling in arts without any sort of or anybody who's trying to make their mark, because it doesn't really pay, and you need to hold a regular a good job to kind of make the payment. So and it is cramming in a little bit of time after I've put her to sleep or before she's awake, some part during a little half an hour during the day. And maybe me in my 20s, I would have never realized that I could do so much, and I wish I had this wisdom kind of little earlier on. A friend of mine, she said, you can have passion, but passion without discipline is just something that's going to lead to frustration. And that is so true. And Ladies Do Comics is one venue, and through I've met some really interesting people who've told me their work pattern. There's some who write on a commute, like thousand I mean, they target certain words in a week, and then they do it on a commute, go back, whole jobs that they like or they do not like, but keep at it at some hour of the day. So that's what I did. I mean, I do have the privilege of having a very supportive partner, and there are some who do not even have that, and they just have to carve out time somehow or the other. It's tough. It's definitely tough, but I think it's doable. And more than that, I think it's when you do it, you go into a little space that's completely your own. And I think that's so important for people, especially this particular age where you're juggling child, job, and so many other things, chores of the house, laundry or cooking, whatever. And you have this little bit of time that's completely and selfishly yours. So if someone has a passion, I would just say go for it. And this whole excuse of I do not have time is an excuse. It is just an excuse, honestly. If you love something, you will find time for it no matter what. I really believe in that now.
Lovely, very, very beautifully said, actually. you need to be willing to invest the time if you really believe in something. Yeah. Okay. So Devi, tell me a little bit about your career journey, the IT part of your work. How has that been, especially since you've moved to different countries? So what have you encountered, and how you managed it?
Okay. And initially, I wish something that I really wish I had known earlier in my career, but I probably this only comes with making mistakes and learning from it, is not to approach anything with fear and uncertainty. When I started off, I mean, I was working in a services company, one among so many. So I didn't have a clear picture of how I was contributing to. I was writing code, but like, the whole picture of the project, it was something like, just doing a very small part. Uh, so to feel a sense of ownership or to feel really invested in it, and that came much later when I started working with a much smaller organization. And because of fear, you stop asking questions, and when you do not ask questions, you work on the assumptions that you've made because you don't want to probably look ridiculous asking a question. And that so solidly backfires, especially in my industry. So one advice that I would like to give anyone who's starting out in IT would be like, ask questions. It's okay, no matter how dumb they sound, but do not start coding into what looks like a really black box, because it's just going to really backfire. Now where I am in right now, I mean, given the number of years that I've had, that I've worked, and I've been always, I do want to continue coding. I really do not see myself as doing anything else in IT. So I'm in a good space where I know my product. I really I'm invested in my product, and I really want to see it scale and go much higher. So ask questions, do not hesitate ever, and do not work in fear, is what I would like to tell anyone who's aspiring for a career in IT.
Excellent. Thank you. And one last question. What is the next book about that you're working on?
Uh, Thank you, Sonali, for that question. Because the next book is something that's is inspired by a true incident in my life, and it's a slightly difficult conversation that we all have. It's to do with the big social divide. Sometimes when I tell my friends that the help uh, or the class system or the caste system, there are so many who say, "Oh, come on, it really doesn't exist anymore," and it's so wrong, because maybe you can't see it because it's become the norm. And this book kind of has a slightly difficult conversation around the still prevalent gap. And sometimes, yes, it's a lot more apparent when you're coming from a very small village. But when you've come from a very small village and then you go back and you still see that same pattern that you've seen over there across, you're like, okay, nothing's really changed. And if you want to voice it or you say something, then you kind of get labels that you really do not agree with. You get boxed in. So this little book is probably a conversation that I've had internally, and I just thought I'll put it in a graphic novel format, and I hope it does see the day of light also. Let's see.
Lovely. Sounds wonderful. And it's so important to have these difficult conversations. And
Yes.
that brings me to, GalaxShe as a platform. If you would like to share your thoughts of whatever you have seen of GalaxShe, and what do you think about what we are trying to work towards?
I'm really honored, Sonali, that I've been asked to actually speak, on this forum. It's amazing. It's the questions that women face, be it in their career or to break out and do something. It is. I'm so glad. The more voices that come out, you kind of know. Okay, you don't need to be satisfied with this what you have, and if what GalaxShe is doing is exactly that, bringing out voices and making women more aware of what they can do and what they really need and be satisfied with. So more power to you, and I really really hope you guys really scale heights, and I'm so excited to see the journey that GalaxShe is going to take. Very excited.
Thank you. Thank you so much.